Hello, welcome to Flory Models Tuesday Q&A session, something a little bit different for you, answering as many of your questions I can get through in the next sort of hour. Here we are on the forum. Quick catch up with me. To be honest, here we are, Splinter Day. So doing splinter work onto the Terminator. So we sort of mocked it up, we've put the panels on just so things line up better, and then it's a case of going through the three colours. So for the moment, we've just got the one colour on. Got to do another bit here, which obviously I'll show you guys. Okay, and we've done a bit of work up there on the turret and everything else. And I have to say, it's going down absolutely fantastic. The paint I'm using, because we'll be talking about paints in a moment, is the Vallejo stuff. Now this is the new smelly ones, as I call them. The great thing with the smelly ones is, for some reason, they cover slightly better than they did before. And I was always a Vallejo fan. Let's face it, you can't see it all there, but it goes all the way down there with all the Vallejo paints. But these new smell ones, the ones that got that floral smell and all the rest of it, work exceptionally well. They seem to have better coverage than they've ever had before. But generally, I know these are new bottles, and with Vallejo, always that thing. First time you open them, they work beautifully. After that, then you have problems. But generally, really, really nice paint to use, giving great coverage, especially with masking work. So, trick is with masking is this. As you can see, tons of masking tape. I tend to reuse it. I just grab another bit and stick it down once it's dry. Make sure it's dry. That's why I've got an entire load of it all over there and put it down. The way I could tackle this sort of problem is to do it as a section. So what I tend to do is I'll do an area and I'll just do that area. Then I'll move over to the next one and then the next one and work my way around it. I'm not one of these guys that comes in here and just masks the entire thing and then sprays it in one. Purely because as well, sometimes, let's face it, the instructions you can see down here, obviously some of these go up and it looks great, but then it doesn't marry up to the top view because some of these don't actually come up. There's a good example, this one here, the side one, which is this one down here, okay, which is this one. You see, we've got this big load of brown coming up here on a diagonal. Well, where is it? Because it ain't there, okay? So there's definitely something a bit funny going on there. So I've used artistic license. You can probably see down in here. I've brought mine up and gone over. Now, so far, it's just got the two colors. So we've gone in with a light sand and then this very light brown, as you can see on top. And then we're going to move in with, obviously, other colors. So we're going to come in with, I think they call it whole red, maroon red, one or the other. But anyway, this is the red color for this one. No problem at all. And as I say, thoroughly enjoying it. It's going down really well. We've done the wheels as well. So they're all painted. Got the other wheels done over there. The track has had one coat of Tamiya, whatever it is, something or other. Their iron stuff, dark iron, XF84, again, another good colour. It's a good starting colour. Then we can come in, obviously, with shading, dry brushing, and then washes and various things like that, really to liven it up. But you can see, generally, moving along very, very nicely with it. Tomorrow, I intend to give this a go. So we're going to try and bend this and then get it mounted onto its stand. Then, by now, it can have a wash. It's all dry and everything else like that. The decals can form down very nicely, and that can have a wash, and that will be done by Friday. So that's that one done. Terminator, got to do a little bit more with it yet, because I am going to weather it, even though technically, as we know, this one's probably more of a showbird than anything else. But certainly from my point of view, I like to do the weathering, doing different techniques. So we're going to be using washes, you know, and then obviously dry brushing. Don't know about oils and all the rest of it. I think I can do everything I need to do, quite frankly, with some of the old clay wash and everything else like that. So that is my plan with this one. But generally, it's moving along very, very nicely. So we're getting there. Anyway, your questions. As I said, we're going to bring back Tuesday. So every Tuesday, the live show, if you like, or the vlog, is going to get sort of rolled into one. So you only get me. The boys will be back with everybody here, as always, on the first Tuesday of every month. But if you've got a serious question and you want to give it to me direct, then as you have done, stick it down in the Ask Phil section, and then what I'll do is, when I'm up to that point, I'll then put the video in, so you know all the questions before that run right the way through. Some of the questions we've got down here, to be honest, I've answered because they were quite small. You know, we've covered them before, things like that. So I'll just obviously write a direct reply down in there. If you don't get reply straight away, but you might see I've liked it or something else like that, but I haven't commented, means that I'm actually going to do it. And I think I've told you in a couple of cases anyway, I'll cover it in today's show. Anyway, Michael asked, hi Phil, with your knowledge of aircraft that you build, and yours is superior to mine with your experience, so with that in mind, is it possible to create a current list of the most used essential jet fighter colours that one should have? And this time, Tamiya Vallejo paints range, if the list already exists, blah blah blah. Right, okay, if you haven't got any other colours, first of all, there's a couple of things you need to know. Modern Jets, Tamiya is terrible. They've got colours that are close to, but they are definitely not modern colours, okay? So you need to then take another step back. Now, Vallejo do a great range of them, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put up a little list which will go into the credits on this and everything else. I won't go through them all, but generally, as you know, my little Bible down here, I have got some already pre-done. Actually, what I could do is probably scan some of this now because my scanner's working again. But generally, I have got down in here some sort of cross-references from Vallejo into here. Now, Vallejo recently have also gone through a little bit of a change, shall we say. So some of their colours are changing. This was brought up on the forum the last couple of weeks. I noticed that some of you guys have got 2 bottles of paint and they're like the same numbers, different names, different colours, but the numbers are the same. So I think Vallejo is actually trying to sort of sort itself out, get itself in scale, but generally I find Vallejo is your way to go. Now, another option is to go and do something like this. So what we got down here is AK sets. We've covered these, we've had a look at them, we do like them. So actually what we got down here is the actual, we've got your light gull grey, okay? Now light gull grey, which is this one down here, which is the AK number is AK2051, okay? But your federal standard colour is 16440. Now basically that is your sort of intruder phantom colour from the 70s. All right, it is that light creamy colour. It's close to XF20 in the Tamiya range, but it's certainly not spot on. All right, white, quite frankly, it's like an off-white. Radon tan, well, you can get that off of anything. Okay, your major ones you want to do is this ghost grey colour. Now the ghost grey colours are obviously your 36320, okay, which is AK, as you can see down here, hopefully AK2058. This is your F16 colour, okay, this is your standard Air Force sort of colours. Then you've got 375, all right, and things like that, right the way through. These are your sort of Tomcat colours and things like that. And it shows on the back here, you can see down the colours here. So you've got the Gull Grey, was always a Tomcat overall colour. Okay, you got your Phantoms and you've got things like your Hornets were always dark ghost grey and light ghost grey and so forth and so on. Now the Air Force colours are slightly different, and if I dig out my ones here, I don't think I've actually got the ones, but Vallejo have brought out now a set which, to be honest, I think I've got rid of the box, which I shouldn't have, because Vallejo do a set as well, and we've got some of the colours here. So down here you've got their Gunship Grey, which is 096. This is F16 dark grey on top. Harriers, the American Harriers, all use the Gunship Grey, various things like that. Okay, so anyway, that is 36118. Okay, now this is polyurethane, don't like it, but hey ho. All right, but down here we've actually got a situation where it's in their colour. So this is the 36375. Okay, oh, thing's gone off, tablet's gone off. Okay, and there you go, 615. Just trying to find the other. This is for your F16, the lighter colour on the bottom. Okay, so if you're in F16, you're going to need this one here, 097, and this guy here, which is your dark ghost grey, which is 120, which is 36320. 3 and 6. 3 means it's a flat. 1 at the beginning means it's a gloss. 2 is a semi-gloss. 3 means it's a flat colour. And then obviously you go through your things of like 320. 3 means it's a form of grey, and then 2 and off of it like that means that that's how the colours work. They're all a little bit weird. What we got down here, I'm just trying to find, that's a duplicate of that one. Okay, that's like an Air Force-y colour. This is your sort of Tomcat, or your sort of, I think it's the Tomcat covered this colour for a while. I think it had this type of colour. This is that darker grey, 237. Okay, what we got down here, 395 and 231. So, you know, the thing is, I will pop up a list with all the numbers on there to cross-reference, but some ways it's quite easy to go out and get these sets. So we're saying, I know Vallejo do a set because we've looked at these on a live show. I don't know what I've done with the box. Do you think I would have kept the box? But I think I've chucked the box now. But Vallejo now do all the colours. I hate to say it, but Vallejo's paints, especially the new ones, are better than AK's. Okay, they just cover better. They've got better everything going for them. I know I shouldn't say that, but it's true, they do. Anyway, that is the thing to it. There's plenty of options for paints out there, but from my point of view, if you wanted to go down the other range, and if you can get them the guns range we've got at the top, you can get all the US colours in there and everything else like that. But for starter sets, these are absolutely great. go and have a look at those. You've got aggressor colours in with those and all the bits and pieces. I've got other paints over there. I'm annoyed with myself. I've actually got rid of the boxes that they did come in, because as I say, it's got all the colours in there just like that. So, right, let me just bring me thing back. Where were we? And as I say, I've answered a lot of the questions down in here, so we just skip through some of that. Andrew asks, thanks for the changes you made recently. I'll be doing some of the tutorials which we spoke about yesterday. Also got a couple of questions. One, I've always had a problem with dry brushing, but not what you might think. My problem is picking so I'm just making sure the camera's rolling. I didn't check. My challenge with picking the colours. Now I did speak about this one I think before, for what colours you'd use for dry brushing. My way is obviously dry brushing, I imagine that it's been rubbed, so it's been worn through. So you've got two options. You either go lighter to give that light reflecting over corners and things like that, or you think it's been rubbed down perhaps to primer because it's been scuffed. So again, do you go in there with a lighter colour? So that's just assume you're using a dark grey. Do you go in with a light grey, okay, to give that effect it's been rubbed over? Or do you even go in with a silver so it looks like it's been rubbed back to metal? I would avoid silvers, especially on smaller scales, because the thing is they pop out too much. There is obviously, you know, sometimes I do use it. When I did the Bandai Millennium Falcon, you might remember I used silver in the cockpit. You can't see in there, so you want everything to be really bright and vibrant and everything else, because obviously the details are so small that you would lose it. So you could do all the detail what you like in there, but in 1/4/4 scale, you're not going to see much going on. So you want to make it big and bold and in your face to make it jump out at you, all right? But if you were doing something like on a tank, something else like that, obviously you don't want to be dry brushing it in silver because it's going to not look very natural. What I would recommend though is you say you could dry brush some areas with a darker colour, like on here, because it's a light colour. That way it'll look like it's worn through the paint. So things have been rubbed off around hatches, grab handles, things like that. Your general wear and tear areas go darker. Now if this was a green tank, I would go lighter, so I would perhaps dry brush it then with things like obviously a light grey, certainly not a white. You want to avoid the very light colours, you want different shades in between. And also don't be in that thing of like using one colour for dry brushing. Modulate it a little bit, okay? So perhaps start off with a dark grey, and then in some areas just to give it sort of difference all over, so it doesn't look like it's all just been dry brushed. Different colours all around it. So perhaps experiment with some browns on there with different colours to make it look like it's got different types of scuffing. Perhaps it's worn through, perhaps there's build up on it, and various things. So don't be sort of pigeonholed into that thing of like it must be one thing, because technically it probably doesn't. Okay. In last video's vlog, you mentioned about using black primer for white airliners. Would that work with other light colours for building? Building a RFAC P51D in 442 markings, which is a big yellow line on top of the aircraft. So I'm wondering if black could be used. We've spoken about this. The reason it brought it up because a lot of people have said to me, black's the future and the way you could go through with your priming and all the rest of it. The reason I mentioned this is that whilst I think it's a complete waste of time on camo, all right, I think if it has its place in white, because what that is, it's making everything look solid. Okay, so if you were using a lighter color such as yellow, having a black primer below it would really help, okay, because what happens is it gives it a solid yellow look to it instead of being a pale yellow. All right, this doesn't work all the way through. So for instance, if you were doing something with red, if it's got a black primer below it, it's not going to work particularly well because it's going to make everything look really dark. Okay, so you might want to use a white primer. So for instance, with the Ducati and things like that, a lot of people said about using a white primer. Well, actually with that one, we went in with greys and various things like it, just so it reflects the paint out of it. Okay, so obviously with your darker colors, you don't want to go too in with a dark primer perhaps, but if you're using a lighter color, I would go darker. All right, so if that makes sense, if it's white, things around framing, clear canopies, stuff like that, especially if it's blue or, you know, not so much metallizers, but definitely on greys and things like that, a black base down, it gives things a solid look to it. Undercarriage, that's how this one came about. If you're doing F-18 Hornet undercarriages, for instance, or naval aircraft undercarriages, because it's like a grey, it gives it a sort of just a white look to it. If you prime it in black, then put white over the top, it makes the undercarriage look heavier, stronger and better because it gives it a more solid look to it, and that's just the way. And like undercarriage doors, if you prime them black on the inside, when you put the white over it, it's a good solid white colour, so it doesn't look like they're just, you know, like a grey white on there. It gives it a solid colour to it. So there we go. Hope that helps. Some of these I answered before. Just a quick question, wondering if you're laying down the panels. Okay, just a quick one. I'm enjoying the MiG-21 build. Just wondering when the part will go up showing laying down of the paint and everything else. That will go up tomorrow, which will get you pretty much to this down here. It's all been recorded and edited. It's just obviously we put one video up on a Monday, one goes up on a Wednesday. You get this Tuesday, Thursday, well, something usually around about the forum, stuff like that. And then on Friday, it's review day and everything else. Right, that's me answering a lot of those. Okay. 1 second. Trust me, my Samsung tablet is not the fastest. I've answered that. We've answered that's answered questions I've just done. Some of these, as I say, I've already answered in the forum, so just have a look down there. That's quite an interesting one. I have answered it and I've put the links up to the videos, but somebody asked, who asked it? Tommy actually said in there about not really a modelling related question, but curious to know the most viewed videos and what are they? Well, to be honest, don't forget, we've only been on YouTube now using their format for the last 5 years. Previous to that, which is like another 5 odd years, we had our own server. And we used to run it off of there. Thank God we don't now, because there'd be massive files and cost a fortune. But generally that's how it always was. So we weren't on YouTube, apart from a few freebies, as basically an advert to get people to join the site, and things like that. So it's very hard to say from an overall of all the time, because when we closed down the server, I didn't make a note of how many views it had and its popularity and how many minutes watched and all the rest of it. Needless to say, the two most famous ones actually up there at the moment, there's old Pro Modelers one, which is probably around about 2007, 2008, and that's on airbrushing, which has had, and I think I put up the views on it, yeah, 170,000 views. And the most popular video that we've done on YouTube after that, well, apart from those other ones on there, but from a point of view of modern, is the Hawker Typhoon review. That was for the one big 24th one, and that's had 53,000 views. So, okay. Right, okay. Hi Brian, great advice. Really appreciate your time, techniques, and blah blah blah. Unless I misunderstood you recently commented on a review about Vallejo primer being polyurethane was the cause of your problem. Isn't styrene res a polyurethane? No. Now, this is something that came out. I spoke to Badger direct when we first had this bit of trouble and I first used their stuff. They came to me, I happened to stay, and said thanks for the review and all the rest of it. Never did give me bottles. They promised me a couple of bottles, but I didn't, so I bought them now. Okay, they assured me that, obviously they're not going to go in details exactly how this stuff's made, but it is not a polyurethane. It is a vinyl, okay, but it's not like a polyurethane. It's not a urethane-based one. They actually described it as to me in a sort of roundabout-ish way what exactly it was, and actually said it is its name. So it is made up of styrene, vinyl and resin, hence its name styrene resin, styrene res. Okay, so it's made up of actually what it is made of. That's what they told me straight from the horse's mouth. I can easily link you to the email that they sent me. I don't think that's a problem at all, but that is it. Polyurethane stuff, as I say, if you peel it out here, if you pour it out on your table and you let it dry, the vinyl stuff, so I think I've still got some down in here. Here we go. It goes great. If I was to pour this out on the desk here, it will dry like a skin, and I reckon I could peel it off in one. That is because of what it's doing, all right? Styrene res, I think it wouldn't. It would just scrape. And also, the big thing is you can't sand this stuff where you can bare stuff. That is the big thing. Now, as I've pointed out before, I'm not anti this stuff. It's just it doesn't work for me. If it works for you, that's absolutely fantastic, brilliant, no problem at all. But I'm not going to waste any more of my time playing with this because I've spent so many days playing with this stuff to get it to work. It's not working when I've got a product that I know works and does the job. So it's not that I'm anti a product, it's just it doesn't work for me. And as I say with this hobby, it doesn't matter what anybody says. If it works for you, then do it, okay? Because I know guys and they hate using acrylics, so they use enamels or they use lacquer-based paints. You get the guys who use like car paints all the time for doing cars and stuff like that. Other guys don't get on with it, they get orange peeling. It's what works for you in the hobby, guys. That's the whole point to this. Don't let anybody tell you what to do, what to use, and when to do it. Because if it doesn't work for you, then it's pointless. You want things that work for you. And I know in this hobby, there is a million different ways to do exactly the same thing. And you'll get a million different people tell you how to do it. But what I try and do, and what I tried to show a lot last year especially with weathering techniques, we used everybody's from AK Interactive's weathering stuff, we used some of the MIG stuff, we used everybody's different type of weathering. To be honest, I'm doing it all thinking, I know it's my stuff and I'm biased and everything else, but with a few little different techniques, I can do everything with a clay wash and have no hassle with it because it works for me, but it might not work for you. And that's what I'm trying to say. But there we go. So that is the thing with it. It's not that I'm anti this vinyl stuff. It's just that, trust me, after playing with that MIG, what should have been half an hour to prime it was 2 days. Purely because I'm using a product and I'm doing my best to get it to work. It's not working exactly how I can do with something else. So from my point of view, a coat of X1 Tamiya, gloss down onto it, we're good to go, and job was done within 10 minutes. All right. Okay, so Stephen says, hi Phil, love the Terminator on this build. Have a question. I have some of the AK paints. Is AK 122 used for the base colour, but when I'm trying to airbrush it, it's like water. No matter what I do, it just runs off and I find it hard to see any colour at all. Have you any ideas on the way that it should be, how it should be? Okay, now the AK paints, to be honest, I've tried them. I hated them with a detest them because they are too thin. But again, this is what we're getting back to. What works for one person doesn't work for somebody else, okay? This is the thing. With their paints, what you have to do is put down extremely thin colours. So you literally mist it down, get it down, dry it back, then on with the next coat and next coat, and you will have a beautiful paint and it will give you a fantastic finish, okay? But it takes a lot of time. It takes, you know, putting down the colours very lightly. It's not as thick and it doesn't have as good coverage as perhaps you might find in obviously a very similar product being like Model Air, okay? It's the same somewhat with AK stuff. AK's paints, I'm gonna grab one of theirs out of here. The AK stuff, we've used it. We've used the mixed stuff. You know, at the end of the day, it works slightly different. I don't think this has got quite as much pigment as perhaps the Vallejo stuff has in there. And the way that the Vallejo stuff doesn't have as much as perhaps the gun stuff or the Tamiya. All right, so what you need to do is literally just take your time with it, light coat, let it dry, next one in, let it dry, and you build it up. 3 or 4 coats later, you have a beautiful finish. Excuse me. Now, why is that? Why have they done it that way? Now, I think personally, what they're trying to do is give a better scale effect of paint, which actually I think is a good idea. If the paint is a little bit thinner, you can actually lay it down and get a finer detailed paint and finish than perhaps you would have if you just come in with something like Tamiya. Because Tamiya is quite a thick, heavy duty paint, and now with modern kits having finer detail, you don't want to be like filling up panel lines, riveting detail, recessed details. You want them to lay in there very nice. Now, this is where I think this paint comes into its own, because it gives you that ability, but it takes a longer way to go through. In the same way, if you remember when we did the MIG, or as you'll see tomorrow when we do the MIG, we thinned using the the Vallejo metal colour. Because this should, and it says everywhere, straight from the bottle and spray it. Tried it, didn't exactly get brilliant results with it. Thinned it, fantastic. Again, very fine details on that MIG. We didn't want to flood it, we didn't want to cover it up. So using it, thinning it out a bit, worked an absolute charm. The same way we did this when, if you watch, I think it was up yesterday actually, part 1, when we put down the sand colour actually onto the Terminator down here. If you remember, we thinned the paint, it gave us time to build it up slowly so we didn't lose the pre-shading and all the colours popped as it comes through. And again, all the details are beautifully clear and everything else like that. So that's the one with that one. So again, like everything, some guys love it, some guys hate it, and everything in between. Personally, I'm one of these guys, I can get it in everybody else's colours and do it, all right? You know, as we now know, there's other companies now are getting in with companies who manufacture kits, so their paints are going with them. Again, MIG, they're in with Takum, AK is now in with Meng. Oh, it's going to get complicated. Okay, so Stephen says, Phil, I'm thinking of painting C3PO's arm. Should have got him out, he's over there. With the red for the Bandai kit. Can you give me, can you just give me a light scuff sanding before painting and priming, or should I skip that first? How would you recommend removing the paint? thanks in advance. Now we're talking C3PO's arm. I'm wondering if I've still, hey look, you're in luck. I need to sort these tubs out. Now, this is the said arm. You're not the only one this is why I've got this here. I was going to actually prime it in red primer and do it like that. Now this is the arm as you can see here. You can pop this straight on and there you go, you've got C3PO with a red arm, just like the film. The thing is, this stuff, because it is so shiny, paint is going to be a nightmare to stick to this, especially when you're talking acrylic. If you were talking things like enamel paints, lacquer-based paints, I think it's not going to be a problem, but acrylic's going to have a problem. So, a couple of options. Fairy Power Spray, you can soak it in that. You can soak it in bleach. Literally just stick them overnight. This gold then just floats off, it just comes away. There's various sort of things out there. I'm sure the guys in the forum have got their own advice on things to get rid of it and all the rest of it. It would work well. The trouble with trying to sand this and scuff it up is that to get in all the details is going to be an absolute nightmare because there's just so fine details you're not going to get right in there. That said, it could be worth to hit this with an industrial primer like excuse me, still got the Flory man flu thing. So a couple of options which I know would stick to this quite well is we've got down here, which is the surface primer. God, this can feels cold. I don't know why. Mind you, the vent's out in that window. Okay, this one here is a flammable and everything, so I'm assuming it's like a hot primer. This would work absolutely great on this. I know, boy, the guys who love this. To be honest, I love this as a primer as well. We're talking about primers and spraying. This stuff is great. Just an extremely expensive way of doing it because it's a can, you get a big area. An amount I go through. Your other option, and obviously being cheapskate corner here, is we've got here plastic grey primer, £3.60 from Tragos. The guys will know about that one. Okay, again, I buy quite a lot of this. Again, I don't do it on things like this because if I spray it near my filter, it will clog it instantly. But when it comes to things like the airliners and that, I might take them outside, give them a quick spray, and you'll be good to go. It would probably work well on this, and I'll tell you what I do after I filmed here, because it's just in there. I'll give it a quick squirt with this stuff and see if it covers it, and see how well it works, just straight onto that. Because the thing is, the lacquer-based ones, they get in there, they attach, they etch themselves into things like that, you'll have no problem. But as I say, acrylic, if I came in with polyurethane, I think that would be a nightmare. It would just run off and look a mess and everything else with it. Okay, so what else we got? Tim, Phil, I have a question about paint and buying in bigger bulk. Bigger bottles. I've been getting used to using Zero Paints range of automotive paints. You can buy them in really big bottles and tins, which suits me as I do the Gundam models. So about 80% of the paint I use is white. I'm just wondering if you can get bigger jars of Tamiya paint. If so, we find it very useful. They used to do. Hey, I wonder. Hold on. Hold your horses. Down in here is my old rubbish. Literally, I've got old bottles of junk down here and stuff. It's where old paints go to die. I can't actually find it. Used to get, this is an old bottle. Wonder what is in that. Don't know what's in there, but it's going around. It looks a bit cloudy. Ugh. Anyway, this is, I'm trying to see what I've written on it in my childish scribble. Can't see. Yeah, this on here is the bigger bottles. They used to do this range. Now, this is going back in the 90s. Used to be only get it in this, couldn't get it in 10mm, and then they sort of switched over. The 10mm bottles came out. But yeah, they used to do big ones, or bigger. I don't know if they were 20mm or 25mm bottles. This one I do believe is 46mm, but yeah, this was a standard size. And to be honest, when I did the commission work, I used to buy my paints in bigger ones. You know, I did a lot of ship commissions back in the day, and as I say, I used to buy the Tamiya colours, you know, XF 19, 54, those useful colours, 53, loads of it in the bigger bottles. Well, I say bigger, not that big. Actually, I haven't got one down here. But I am looking. I don't know. I thought I might have one in my old rubbish sets down here, but no, I haven't actually got one down there. But yeah, they used to do them. I don't think they can get them anymore. I remember stuff in the late 90s, early 2000s. A lot of the model shops used to find them in the bargain bins, so I assume they discontinued them. But used to. But that's about it. As for everybody else, I don't think so. I don't think anybody else does bigger bottles than actually what you find, unless you go into other ranges and doing it that way. The trouble with it is as well, one, how much paint you're going to go through. As you're saying yourself, with white you go through tons of it. You could probably get, as you say, if you just wanted solid whites, car way of going through, because obviously that's a cheap way of doing it, because don't forget you get acrylic car paints as well, pure acrylic ones at that, so you could go down that route if you use a lot of white and do it that way. But if you're doing this is like the super glue thing. If you've got too much of it, it tends to go off. Vallejo especially, you know, in these smaller bottles with the pipettes, they get the skin around it. Extra acrylics, especially, horrible stuff, because it's just a nightmare start to finish, and various things. So yeah, just be aware that I think paint have a life expectancy. So if you're going to get them in bigger and you don't use it all, then you have a real problem. That said, Tamiya, some of those I've had for donkey's years now, and occasionally I'll dip into them, and although they're not particularly nice, they still work quite well. Okay, Tom asks, during a session with the MIG, used a tool and called it the Holly Scriber by Alec. I've searched the internet to no avail. Could you please indicate where you bought it? You are truly an inspiration of this wonderful hobby. Thank you. Hey, don't get your head out the door. Right, Holly Scriber. Funny enough, Friday I might actually do the thing on scribing. This is it. If I drop the old top cam, you can see. And you can see it is by, I can catch it in the light, there you go, Alec Hobby. So this is the 0.15, you can see it here, it is Alec out there. So it's A-L-E-C, okay. So is that Shomoria Alec Company Limited? And you can see it's Holly down there. That is the business end, absolutely lethal, but it does do a very nice job. The thing I like about this one, when we did it on there, if you're doing a curve, when you're using a P cutter, it's like quite jerky, and even though you're trying to pull it, it's a nice smooth, very hard to get it. This, because also you can hold it right at the end as well, you can get a nice swoop with it, and a very light scratch, and then you just go back and back and back, and then I did about 4, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I had the right depth then. The only thing with these is it doesn't self-clean the channel, so if you're using a P cutter, you'll notice when you pull it back, you get like a roll, and it's made a perfect trench. This tends to scratch its way through. So what you might want to do, like I did with that one, to be honest, is come back with a little bit of Tamiya extra thin, light brush over it so it melts the edges and makes it smoother, and goes through it like that. Or go back in with the P cutter afterwards. Once you've got this one in, it's made the line, go back in to make a nice straightforward line, and that's what we did on that one. I might have to use this again to go into there, because some of the areas where we've sanded and we've taken care of joins, this has made too fine a panel line. So what's happened is with the paint, and because of we had trouble with primer, it's filled it in. So what I might do before the wash goes on, or during the wash process, is pop around it again with this, so the wash goes in the scratch that this makes, giving us perfect panel lines to make our way through. Where did I get it from? Models Are Go. John at Models Are Go. Have a word with him. If he's not in stock, email him, and perhaps he'll put it onto a back order system for you. I don't know if he does, but that would be quite handy to have. I don't think he comes on the forum anymore. He used to come on the forum and he could answer your questions, but I know he's very busy these days trying to keep up with all the orders. So I don't think he's on the forum as much as he used to be, but definitely shoot him a PM or give him a phone call and say that's what you're after. I know he doesn't bring in tons of them, because obviously it's very expensive to bring these things in. So once they're in, you know, like all these things that come in from the Far East, they tend to go out very quickly, and you have to wait for the next stock to come in. But if you have a word with him, he might put you on a back order and you can get them next time they come in. This is the 0.15. I think they do the 0.10, and I think they do a 0.2 as well. Okay, Andy King. First, an idea for your tutorials. Would you consider showing how to do your own decals? We've spoken about this a lot. Be great for nose art, etc. The trouble with that is it takes a lot of time and a lot of messing around with, and not all decal papers are the same, as I found. This is going back to commission days when I did all those F18 Hornets you saw the other week when I put them all up on the forum. Again, it's one of those things where some of them we took other people's decals and we enlarged them. But I did keep the original decals, not like, you know, we sold them on or something. So we made decals bigger by resizing, and we did it that way. Other ones, it was photos. And then we, well, I didn't, the customer I was doing it for, the client, actually then photoshopped them into a decal format and then sent it to me, and then I'd print them out and do it. I'm by no means an expert on this. There's guys out there who do this for a living. They know exactly what they're doing with it. I just literally had 2 types of decal paper. You can have clear or white backed. Okay, so if you're going to use the white back, it is printing onto white, because obviously most printers, and that is the problem with printing your own decals, do not print white. Okay, I know there's specialist printers out there who do print white, but we're talking about your normal desk jet or your laser jet, things like that. They won't do it. Okay, so you need to then print onto white to give you that white area. If that's the case, then you have to cut out all the way around it and then put it on. The trouble is, if you cut it right on the edge, you get bleed. Okay, so you have to seal those first. So you could use clear, you can get Decal set systems, which actually are like a film that goes over the top, and then you put them on. I've never had mass success for it. I've had it that it's worked, and if you go back through some of those F-18 Hornets on there and some of the Phantoms that I did for the same client, you'll see you can usually work out which ones are decals and which ones were me making decals, because they're just not got the resolution and the quality of being silk screen printed and all the rest of it. Don't forget, there's lots of generic stuff out there as well. So if you're just wanting numbering, lettering, stuff like that, because I've done squadron markings like, VMFA, blah, blah, blah. I've actually bought them as individuals to make up VMFA and all the rest of it. It's just that if you want coats of arms and various things on the back of it, then it's a different story and you're going to have to work it out. So anyway, my question is, I bought the 1/24th scale Hurricane. This kit, as you might have tried my super I'll start again. The Hurricane, as I thought I might try my hand at super detailing like you did on your Typhoon. The problem with that is the wing, one side is buckled on the sprue. What is the best way for correcting large parts that are buckled? I don't want a twisted wing and then glue it together. Thanks in advance, and that's handy. From Guernsey. Okay, it's probably like that back in the 70s. These are very old kits. When you're going to get guys now say, "I'll put it to hot water." The trouble is, if it's been twisted for a long time, the chances are it's always going to try and return to that shape. My way would be is to build the wing, and you might notice it sort of pulls itself together. You could also give it some structure inside. So if you've got a situation with a wing and it's bending up, building formers or sandwiching plasticard inside the wing, so when you glue it, it physically becomes solid. Okay, there is other options. You could then obviously try and heat up hot water, but I don't think it's ever going to work with styrene. Resin has this ability where we've done it before. You heat up a resin cockpit, things like that. I've had them where they've been funny shape. It goes all floppy, you lay it down, as soon as it cools it goes rock hard in that position, and I'm thinking back to when we did the F-22, we had, I can't remember who it was now, a resin cockpit with a canopy set, and it was like a banana, so we heated it up in hot water, put it on the model, and then it's set in the correct position, then we took it off and then attached the glass and we were good to go. But with styrene, it's always going to try and return. So what I would try and do is perhaps make up formers in the inside, and then you can either hot glue them just into position as an instant tack system, and then so it's gripped onto it to bend, physically change the form of it. So for want of a better word, you're rebuilding the wing spars inside, and then the deformed parts are going to be your skin, and you're going to go on and it's going to pull itself in. I would try and build the wing as you would normally and just see what happens, because I've had it in the past where one part's been like a banana, but the good part has pulled it down and in, and then when it's attached to the aircraft, especially on wings, especially, I don't know how that one goes, I think it's a one piece under, and then once that's in and that's fine, then the next one on top, it's a good joint and it should make it solid and it won't bend and not conform and everything else like that. Okay, what else we got? Jason, simple question for you. What brand / model is the silver tripod? The silver tripod, silver tipped, very pointed needle. These guys. Amtech. There we go, super fine. Actually, super lethal, because they are sharp as hell. There is other versions available, but my ones are all by these guys. This come in a pack. I didn't even realise it's got like 0.05. Some of these other ones, to be honest, these ones here, which are pretty much the same thing, but they're a lot more expensive. These guys were sent to us from a company who manufactured them in China as samples. We could have had Flory models written on them, just like these have. But when we worked it out, by the time we'd done it, brought them in, all the rest of it, it would have worked out like, I don't know, $5 a set. You can buy these off of eBay in a set for about, to save money. It's like no money in it at all. Here we go, they come, see this one's called a 2A, look, and it's got flat. So you get a 2A, to be honest I have got some more, I think they're somewhere else. Oh, here we go, look. These are longer ones, these are really long guys. So, but yeah, have a look for Amtech. These are the ones, I think they actually come in that set, literally just like that. Okay, these other ones without anything on are basically a Chinese knockoff. And I'd say we could have had them logoed and printed and all the rest of it. I think they came into us at something like £4 with the VAT. They're absolutely nothing, but the quality, you know, to be honest, they don't feel very springy. These are proper, these feel better, if you know what I mean, with the rest of it. So yeah, that's those. Have a look on eBay, because I think that's where they came from, if I'm honest. Okay, Kenneth and his first post. Hi Phil, new to the site, been following you for a while on YouTube, really enjoy the tips. I remember watching a video on AK Extreme Metal paints and ordered some for my 1/72 Russian Bear. I put down a coat of Humbrol Gloss Black, let it dry, and then sprayed AK aluminium, and was horrified to see it bubble in small places, but not everywhere. After putting so much work into adding the motors, oh god, for spinning the props, and this happened. I was looking forward to spraying it in different shades for the panels and stuff, but I'm afraid to spray any more. It was just then I remembered you saying something about a bad batch. Can I find it, though? Any hints, tips would be grateful, Ken. Damn. I've never heard of it bubbling up. It must have reacted to something on the surface. Bad batch literally is when it's like tar. I don't know what I've done with my bad ones. I think they're around somewhere. The bad ones, the easiest way I can see is because they're like glue. When you unscrew the top, you do that now, nothing even comes out. They are literally solid. What they should look like is when you give them a shake, they are so thin, they're like water. That's the difference. If you give it a damn good mix up, like these guys, you can see it's literally like water, but you want it all to mix. If you're shaking it like hell and it's like green, then it isn't working. But these have been stood up here now for the last sort of 6 months since we first got them. As well, especially this colour, because I don't think we've used it. There we go, it's starting to come to life. But you're looking it to look, to be honest, like Alclad on the side of a glass. You want it to stick, and for the pigment and all the bits to run off like this. Okay, you see what we're getting at with it? So it's literally got like a tide system. That's a good one. If you're doing it and it's not a lot's happening, i.e. you're shaking it, it's not like you can see at the bottom, it's starting to mix now on the bottom. Another shake. You can see it's doing this where it's breaking through the sediment of it now and all mixing. Then that is a good batch. If it's not doing that, chances are it's a bad one. Have a word with them at AK. You can see it's a brand new bottle, never been opened, and everything else. The batch numbers, they were telling people certain batches were involved and stuff like that. I don't know, you know, as I say, I think the information on that's a little bit sketchy because I've heard one thing from one person and something completely different from another, so I don't know. But if it's a bad batch, I've never heard of it attacking the surface. You know, you're saying you're using an enamel, well, technically I think they'll be okay. As long as that base coat was totally dry, my one concern would be that base coat wasn't dry. What's happened is, because it wasn't totally cured rock hard, that broke through the skin and etched itself into the surface. Could be something like that. If it is that, I'm not too sure. As for the rest of it, I don't know. I take it you would have given it a long time to dry. It's very hard to know with only so many facts, but I'm assuming it's probably would have been totally dry to you, but it may have been that thing where, to be honest, like this was sprayed, you know, this morning before we came on air. This is totally handleable and dry, but if I was to come in with a wash, I know it'd eat through the paint because it's not totally cured and gone off yet. That, after so many days, will be absolutely fine and it'll be impervious to everything. But it may have been the same type of thing going on with your paints, that for the moment it seemed great. Afterwards, then obviously you have a bad reaction with it. So sorry to hear about that, Ken. Okay, Douglas says, hi Phil, a couple of questions. How do you use decals when you try to apply them out of the Tamiya 150 kit? Thanks, Doug. How do you use the decals to disintegrate? Sorry. Right, it depends on what you're using. Go back and have a look at the Hind video because that's where I cover it. I've had lots of people question me on this one. It depends on the decals. Now, kit manufacturers' decals tend to be a bit more heavy duty than aftermarket. I used aftermarket decals, Linden Hill ones, and that we just literally used a bit of, I can't remember even what it was now, enamel thinners. In fact, I think I used Tamiya enamel thinners with it. Literally cotton bud, brushed it over it, let it eat in, and then I rubbed it with my finger, and the carrier film, part of the you know, the clear film that's on there, just rolls up and rolls away, and it leaves you with the decal with no carrier film. I've had other people say, I've tried it, it's never worked for me. I think it depends on the decal. So what you want to do is try one somewhere you don't notice it and try it like that. The other thing as well that I've noticed caught a lot of people out, don't try and do it on tiny little stuff. So don't think you can come in and remove the actual carrier film off the wording, because it will just strip it all off. It will get under it. It needs to be something like a star. So if you were doing the red star like we've got down here on the MIG or under here, what you want to do is literally brush it all over, again making sure everything's sealed around it, but not the decal obviously, okay, and then let it etch in, and then very lightly with a cotton bud go over it. You'll know if it's going to work because it will start to eat the actual clear film. Then, to be honest, to speed things up, I come along with my finger, and again, very wet finger with actually thinners on it, lightly rub over it. Don't be going in there doing this because you're going to tear out your decal, okay? Because don't forget, it will eat the decal eventually as well, but for the moment it's just going to eat the carrier film because it's thinner. As soon as you've got it, most of it off, like I do, that's it, you stop. I don't use that technique all the time. I only use it on specific things like lettering. So with the hind over there, because it had the big lettering on the tail and down the back end, carrier film all over it was a perfect example of doing it. We did it around the mouth as well because it had quite a bit of carrier film around it, so we got rid of it. But have a look at the Hind 24, that's the one that had it in there. But again, decal manufacturers, each of them work, some of them work really well, some of them particularly bad. I know Airfix ones doesn't work at all on theirs because I don't know what their carrier film is, but it's not affected at all by enamel thinners, so that way, you know, it just sits there and laughs at you, okay? But again, check a small one somewhere. Okay, Douglas asks, the other question was, what shades of black and white would you recommend to use on a Dragon 1/72 scale Apollo 11 Saturn V? Also, my air compressor is spitting water out of the brush. I don't have a tank and it runs continuously when I'm spraying. Thanks in advance from Melbourne. Right, okay, first thing, all colours, just remember, don't use white and don't use black. Remember, this is my one bit of advice I'd give anybody for modelling. Okay, now this comes back to my sort of other days of doing architectural work and stuff like that, but also I've got a friend of mine who's in the film industry and he's done a lot of, well, very well-known films as well. And the first thing he said to me one day was, don't use black. And he said, in the same way, get rid of your white. Now, I do have black and I do have white, but if you notice, I use shades of, and we're not talking 50 shades here, but for instance, for doing black work, I like this stuff, so I use XF85. This looks like black, but it's got a funny hue to it. Okay, it's got a hue, so it's almost like a you know, like a rubber black. I know it sounds stupid, but the other one I like is gun stuff. Guns have, what is it? I think it's 77, is it? They call it tire black. It's an off black, okay? The other way of doing it, of course, you can cut it with a tiny bit of white just to knock it a shade off of black. Again, with the white, do the same thing. The other thing as well, we were talking about earlier, white, spraying white. I would prime it in black, then do white, which could save you a job here. Spray the entire thing in off black, okay? Then mask it, then spray the white on top of the black. That'll give you a very nice solid black look to it instead of looking plastic and clear and all the rest of it, okay? And that's a definite one, because also the thing is, because you're going to be doing something like a tube, the light is going to pass through it. So if you're just putting white onto grey plastic, you're going to have a funny light effect. Put the black on there, it will seal it, it will stop light passing through it, it will give you a stronger look. So what I would do for something like that, perhaps with the white, and funny enough, I have a shade down here. This is my shade here, which isn't white. Now, this is what I use, which is, you can see it needs a good old mix, to be honest. When I did all my Star Wars stuff that's supposedly white, they use something called Floquill white, which is an off-white. This is my version of that. Now, I know under the studio lights it'll probably look different, but this is it. Now, I can't remember exactly how I made it now. I have to go back and have a look at the Bandai video. It will, on those, it will show you. But this is my version. So actually what this is a grey white. But you might have noticed when we did all the things, actually it's the Y-wing I think we used it on. I'll just grab the Y-wing here. If I can get it out without breaking everything. Okay. It gave us, for want of a better way of doing things, it gave us an off white. So as you said, even under strong studio lights and all the rest of it, it gave us what we wanted. So it gave us the basis of a grimy white. Now, I'm not saying to go that far with your rocket, because obviously that's going to be fresh, pristine, stood on the launch pad before launch. But if you're thinking about actually getting in there then and perhaps doing some oily sort of streaks and hydraulic things off of it we was going to get, then you could go in with a little bit of a shaded white. But what I would recommend is perhaps if you're using a white, cut it with something like a grey, okay, and probably only like 2%, just to knock it off of being pure white, because as I've been pointed out to me, nothing's pure white. Everything is an off shade of white. And as soon as you start getting into this thing of weathering and various bits and pieces, to be honest, like we did on here, it's used as your first stage of weathering, because it accentuates everything else that's going on with this thing. Okay, so when we weathered this up and made it nasty and all the bits and pieces that go with it, we're all good to go. It just gave us that correct colour and everything else. But that one, to be honest, had loads of stuff over the top of it to weather it down. Okay, so what else we got? I know we're running rapidly out of time. It's the time, 3 o'clock. Close. Ding. Right, okay. Kevin Smith, hi Phil. I'd like to ask, what is your preferred method for attaching photo etch to aircraft canopies? I've looked around the forum, and as most members seem to use CA glue, I've seen fine work, but unfortunately I have fallen foul of the disaster when using the same. We've all been there. Tiny bit, fogs up. Not too much of a problem if you can get in there, and to be honest, a toothpick will scrape clean the fog off of it, because what it is, it's just the fumes have etched themselves onto fingerprints, dirt, grime, whatever's on there. Okay, if it's totally clean, you shouldn't have a problem with it. But I'm like you, I've been fouled and all the rest of it. Preferred is this stuff, crystal clear. To be honest, some of you, I think I've covered this before, mentioned on the forum that yours is really gritty and horrible. So was mine. So I cut it with a tiny bit of normal distilled water, and great, no problem at all. Worked an absolute treat. Smoothed it out, makes it flow better. But that stuff, the only drawback to that obviously is that it takes forever to dry. All right, and because it takes forever to dry, hanging something photo etch and they just fall off. Secret to that is the tiniest amount. Okay, so what you want to do is just use the smallest amount of nice drop of white. So put in literally a pinprick, then press your part in. Because it's so small, it won't take long to dry, and it dries really quickly. Okay, once that's done, what I tend to do is I'll make up a mix 50-50 with water, and then I'll touch it and let the capillary action go through, and that'll make a stronger weld to your clear part. Okay, and that'll stop your canopy bars, grab handles, mirrors, all those usual things from falling off. What I tend to do is let gravity do it. So I'll stick it down here, put it on there in the white glue. The white glue is quite thick, that little drop of it, and then it'll hold it, and then afterwards I'll come in and just let the capillary action zip around to seal it down properly and gives you a better grip to it. The other way, of course, is to use something like, if you're using a thicker glue, the Tamiya, this stuff won't fog your canopy. Okay, this is that thick resin based glue, but again, tiniest amount, because if it does go on your canopy, it'd be horrible. But if it does, it doesn't fog it, but it'll make it go a bit wonky. You won't be able to see through it. Okay, and again, capillary, it'll just run off on its own. So the tiniest drop, so it's localized on the part you're actually attaching it to. Okay, what do we got? Keith says, hi Phil, can you give me some tips on the best way to create seamless kit wheels? Nearly with all aircraft that come in two halves, I do struggle with the seam even after sanding. Maybe you could do a mini tutorial on this. That's a good point. I could probably sort something else out. But in the end of the day, it's no different from doing, like we did, the seam line on the aircraft. Careful sanding and making sure you've got enough glue. My usual thing is, because it's a wheel, if you hold two halves together, I know this isn't it, but bear with me. You hold the two halves, a touch of glue goes round, that glue doesn't penetrate in there. When you sand it, you can end up with sanding through the welded bit, and then you're into an open gap, and you end up with a seam running right the way through. So what might be better is use a thicker glue, so something like a Tamiya cement, or the thicker glues out there. Okay, putting that on, sandwich it, make it squish out the sides, all the rest of it solid as a brick. Let that totally dry, then sand it, and you won't have a problem with it. Okay, but a lot of the trouble you find is that you hold it together, extra thin goes around, you think it's glue, but when you sand it, you sand through the glued area and it's into a void inside. But if you use a thick glue, squish it, push it out the sides, let it dry, sand it, and you're absolutely fine. And you find if you're going to obviously do weight on wheels with flat spots on the tyres, you need all the glue to go all the way through, otherwise you're going to sand through that and you're going to have a gap. Okay, so that is a little bit of a tip on that one, but something, yeah, I could sort out, that's not a problem. Right, David asks, hi, I'm building the Hobby Boss F14A, great kit, and it's completely out of the box as I think they're detailed enough as a display model. However, the landing gear requires it to be built with a hole prior to insertion of the lower half of the fuselage. I know this part of the rear landing gear is inserted straight into the external part of the body. My question is, would you leave the lower home? Right, okay, hold on 1 second. Quick edit, let me just grab the kit, because I can't quite work out the instructions on it. It's always handy when you have the kits lying around, so let's just see, because I looked in this kit years ago, and we haven't been in here. Look, we haven't, this is a brand new unopened one, which is unheard of for me. Okay, hold 1 second, let me just get an idea of what you're on about. Okay, so right, so that should pop afterwards. So that's tail and the mains. Right, okay, so, right, I get your question. I would put it in afterwards. I think there's no reason why you couldn't put that in afterwards. I'm definitely just trying to see. I assume it will just drop down into that slot, and you've got this one is going to kick in and go into the side leg. The nose one is a straightforward push in. Personally, I would do it all afterwards. Paint the gear, do it as complete separate, and then afterwards push the gear in. Okay, and it will go up and in. It's saying about putting them in the wheel well now before you insert it, but honestly, I'll do it afterwards. When you're in this stage, then I'll put it in. And that's my standard way of doing all aircraft, as you'll see. What will happen is I will mask up, usually using the doors if I can, a little bit of tape in there and some, you know, the actual white tack, fill up the void. Or if not, if you can't do that, sponge and do all the doors as a separate. All right, and pop all those in. So that would be the way that I would physically do it on that one, rather than inserting the gear early on. I don't think you need to do that. I think you can get away without doing it. Okay. Robin says, hi Phil, I just wondered if you're going to do the 1/24 scale P47 as a review. Lovely looking box. Yes, so it's over there now. Yeah, be up on Friday for that one. So that'll be the P47 Kinetic 1/24 scale, which is the old something VFC kit or whatever it's called, vintage kits. Beautiful. Obviously, they did the bubble back, the bubble top, which was seen usually, but they do the razor back as well. So you've got that one. Okay, Carl asks, hi Phil, I'm about to start painting the Tiger Meat scheme. I'm using the Guns paint and self-leveling thinners. I'm going for a high gloss finish, and I've found that Stynel Res will kill it a bit. Would it be okay to use AK's black base as a primer instead? The main colours are yellow and blue. Yes, the black base obviously with the AK stuff, and then you're going to be using lacquers anyway. It's all the same thing, it'll work well. And to be honest, that AK stuff is a beautiful primer. If I was to be doing anything like we spoke about, to be honest, when we was doing this thing, I would probably use their base, and I have bought a box of them as well. If not, if you wanted to do it down the acrylic route like I did on that one as a touch-in, then X1, okay, right the way over it, and away you go. But as you said, if you're going to start doing high gloss things, then what you could do is start off with Stynel Res, put that down, happy with that, and then come over the top of it with other things, and you'll be fine, because it's pretty much impervious to everything. But if you're going to be going down the lacquer route and using all things like that, then you might as well just stay with, you know, their base, because it's lacquer based, and go through the motions of it just like that. So I think that is us up to date. Let me just make sure we are no more questions. Thank you for everybody for your great questions this week. Pleasure as always. Let me just make sure we haven't got another one down here. No, we're up to date, amazingly. Right, so there we go. Thank you for watching today's Q&A here on Tuesday. Remember, get your questions in nice and early, and it gives me time to prep as well for answering them. And then in future, what we can do is little videos and show on test and various things where I get a little bit more prepared. Join us tomorrow. Obviously, we've got the part of the MIG, which I know a few of you are waiting for, is obviously getting all the colours onto this and using the paint, which actually I think, to be honest, the more I'm looking at this, the more I'm actually liking it. It's really looking the business, all right? So this one is go up. Tomorrow, I might even bend the stand. I might be able to film that for you tomorrow, get that seen. I'm going to try it with a heat gun. Normally, as you know, I put it in the oven, but I've watched other people and they do it with a heat gun and they're here with it and they're... That would be easier because that way you can actually see what you've got. Because the trouble is when you take it out of the oven, that's it, clock's ticking, it's going to go hard, so you try and bend it in the right shape and everything else. So what I'm going to do is make myself a little template, hopefully knock it up, bend it round it, and we'll all be good to go. But obviously this needs to be cut to length, so we need to work out how much we're going to need it and everything else like that. But there we go. But anyway, thank you very much for joining me, and I'll catch you all this time next week.